I'm doing well, thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so as I said earlier, this is going to be a Google Hangout for Student Voice in a Box, which is basically an online hub for teachers and students to get involved in Student Voice, which is obviously all about getting students involved in the education conversation all around the world. And one of the aspects that we're going to do is interviewing teachers and just hearing from teachers who have been in Student Voice about their experiences and what they've learned so far. So if you don't mind, go ahead and start telling me a little bit about yourself and your involvement in Student Voice.
Okay. Um, First of all, I'm an educator. This is my 37th year in education, um, and as a teacher. Of course, I've been a student ever since I was 4 years old, I guess, and that was about when Lincoln was president, I think. Um, and I've enjoyed, I've enjoyed every minute of my education career, and I don't think I'm at the peak of it yet. Right now, I'm doing a lot of things, but my basic job is the deputy to the director of the Charter Schools Division of LA Unified School District, and I'm responsible for the district level oversight of 270 charter schools. And I lead a team of 60 people. We have operations people, fiscal, financial people, education people, administrative support, clerical people, and we oversee these schools. And I also am preparing to teach a new course for UCLA in leadership of charter schools. And I've written it, I'm writing it this semester, and it's in the process of getting approved right now. And then we'll be teaching in the fall. And so I've been teaching grad school now for maybe 10 years or so, and I came to Student Voice really as a graduate school professor because I began to see in my own students the need for voice in the classroom. I had to make a conscious choice as a professor. Did I want to be the sage on a stage, or did I want to be a facilitator of learning? And then I had to ask myself some real epistemological questions. How does knowledge happen? Where does knowledge come from? Do I bring it to the students and feed it to them and give them words of wisdom? Am I sort of like John Locke talked about, do I believe that my students are a blank slate, tabula rasa, and I'm coming to inscribe my wisdom upon their slates? Or Paulo Freire, the great Brazilian educator and philosopher, talked about banking system of education where you make deposits into students' heads. And I had to come to grips with the fact that's not the kind of teacher I wanted to be. I wanted to be the kind of teacher that realizes, yes, I have some things that I can share with my students, but my students also have some things to share with me, and they're sharing with me, they're giving to me of their knowledge, then begins to shape my knowledge. My knowledge in return begins to shape theirs. And we create something together that we couldn't have created separately.
Awesome.
And that's my vision for Student Voice. And I realized that in order to do that, students had to converse. Students had to, I always talk about they have to get their hands in the flour and make bread. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If when I walk into a classroom and people say, "Oh, I want to see my students engaged," and that's Student Voice, right? Engagement. Well, what am I looking for? Well, I'm not looking for them to be staring at ingredients on the table. Here's some oil, here's some eggs, here's some flour, here's some yeast. Aren't they wonderful? They're the best products in the world. I've had them shipped in all over the world. This is the best olive oil, pure virgin extract. But nothing's being made, right? So I want to see students with their hands in that flour actually making something and creating something. they've taken Bloom's taxonomy of knowledge and sort of put a modern twist on it in the past few years. And the very top level of that taxonomy right now, they're talking about is creating. And I really believe it used to be evaluating, that was the top. But they've changed it to creating, and I love that because that's student voice. It's students taking knowledge, making it their own in conjunction with their peers and the professor or the teacher or the kindergarten teacher, it doesn't matter, and making something all brand new. So I decided when I became involved with social media that that was going to be a focus, and I found student voice sort of by accident and started tweeting some of the people there, and they invited me to a chat. I loved what I saw, and from there it's just been wonderful for the past few months.
That's awesome. I really like what you said about the creating part. I mean, it's very rare to see teachers have an emphasis on creating. Most of the time it's just, like you said, just evaluating what the student has done, and not really, there's no really creation, like you said, with the yeast and the olive oil and all those things.
Yeah, and Cody, another thing to think about too, I tell my pre-service teachers when I'm working with them, you're not going to be able to have these wonderful moments of bread making every single day, every single lesson. And I think you go in and you tell students, this is my vision, this is where I want us to go. But I realize some days we're going to have to do some things that may not be as creative. We may have to measure out that flour, and we may have to measure out that oil, and we may have to get the yeast. It's not, I don't want teachers to think that if they don't have these wonderful moments of creativity every single day, every hour, that they're a failure as a teacher. That's not true. But I think you're honest with your students and you say, this is my goal, this is my vision, let's do it together. Some days are going to be better than others. Some days we feel better than others. Some days I want to be here more than I do others, and someday you want to be here. And let's be honest, okay? We're learners together. And that brings about voice, because I believe that student voice really revolves around relationships, and that gets into issues of power. Who has the power in the classroom? Who feels empowered to speak? That gets into culture and race and ethnicity and gender and all kinds of things, which are fascinating. And I think we have to acknowledge all that goes on in the classroom. I don't care if it's kindergarten or doctoral students. I've taught them all, and I've seen it work in all different levels.
That's awesome. So, you said that you oversee a lot of teachers. What sort of tactics do you instill in those teachers for helping them work with the students and creating all these different things?
Yeah, one of the things that I like to share with pre-service teachers that come through a graduate program preparing to be teachers. In California, teacher education is a master's level or a post-bachelor's level credential. You get a bachelor's degree in something. There is no bachelor's degree in education by and large in California. There's no undergrad degree. It's a graduate level thing. So I have graduate level students, master's and doctoral level students. And one of the things I've been talking about lately is the difference in asking questions and questioning. Okay. And I think if you think about that, that gives a paradigm for a real pedagogy right there. Because look, I can ask questions as a student all day long. I can ask, but those questions that I'm asking could be in a box. They could be circumscribed. They could be what I think the teacher wants to hear, right? They could be what I think might make me look like I read the assignment. But if I question, I dig deep into myself and I ask what really matters. And I think if teachers begin to lead students toward questioning the text, questioning the author that wrote the text, questioning their peers, questioning the teacher, questioning society, questioning the world, questioning philosophy, questioning power structures. Why did the university say this? I think that's one of the important things right now that I'm trying to emphasize to teachers. Get your students to the place where they're not just asking you questions, but they're questioning.
So the whole emphasis, I guess, is on like asking the bigger questions, not just the surface level, easy to answer sort of things. So what sort of results have the teachers had in their own classrooms from this sort of thinking?
Yeah, I think when teachers begin to do that, a whole different environment begins to happen where students feel like, okay, if I can question that, like, why did you have us read that? Mm-hmm. Dr. Perry, you gave us this assignment. Why did you give that to us? That's questioning. What did the author say in the third paragraph is asking a question. But why did you give this to us? What was your purpose? What were you trying to get out of it? Or I turn it around. You guys read that. Did you read this week because I gave it to you and it was your assignment? Or did you read it because it piqued your interest, because you could use it with your students in the future? So I have seen teachers really emancipate a classroom by allowing students to question, not just ask questions.
That's
and
awesome.
Then and then begin to create those. I was in a classroom, and it wasn't one of my students, but I was visiting one of our schools, and I try to get in the schools as often as I can, and the politics of the district office will let me, because I stay real busy putting out fires. But I was out. I had a friend from Twitter who came from Australia, and he was in Los Angeles and contacted me and asked me if I could show him some real innovative schools. And I said, "Oh, you shouldn't have asked me. I can keep you a week and show you those. There's wonderful things going on." So we went to this school and went in a fifth grade classroom. The teacher, they had read some story. Actually, I didn't really know what the story was because they had gone so far beyond the text. They were creating their own text with questions. And the students they were asking each other questions, and they had a monitor. And so the one student would say, okay, take 1 minute to write down a question that you care about this story that we just read. And so they watched their clock. They gave them 1 minute. All student-led, fifth graders. Then they said, okay, time's up. Put your pencils down. Has everybody got a question? If you've got a question, raise your hand. They raised their hand. Then the student said, okay, now I want you to ask your question. Is it a whole class question, or is it a question for one individual? And the person said, oh, it's a whole class question. He said, okay, ask the question. She asked the question. And it was a deep question, not a knowledge level question. Mm-hmm. And then another student, obviously very well trained, said, okay, class, process time. And he held his thumb up like that. And he did like this, however long. They couldn't talk. And then he said, okay, answer. Well, the kids were leading this. The teacher was over with her clipboard writing, and I knew what she was doing. She was writing down the various interactions or who participated or those kinds of things. That's a student-led class. Those students will remember that the rest of their lives. I had goosebumps, and it thrills me when I see students taking ownership of their own learning. Now, once again, I'll remind all teachers, and I'll say it to you: don't expect don't expect of yourself that has to happen every single day. Give yourself some freedom, but if you can get to the place where it happens every day, that's phenomenal. I taught for 16 and a half years in a 4th and 5th grade classroom. Up until about 10, 12 years ago. And I did get to that place where every day became these kinds of lessons all day long. I had a self-contained 4th and 5th grade class, and we had from 8 to 3 together every single day. And after about the 7th or 8th year, I learned how to do that. So I just want to testify that it can be done, but you can't beat yourself up over it. The fact that maybe you don't do it every single day.
What sort of advice do you have for teachers who are trying to get their classroom from a knowledge base sort of environment to a more questioning sort of environment? What's the point A to point B transition? How do they get there?
Yeah, first thing, two of my favorite authors in the world, Doug Fisher and Nancy Frye, they're from San Diego, and they have a model called the gradual release of responsibility.
Okay.
I think that model is absolutely fantastic, and I've taught it for years, and it's I do, then we do, then you do. And that's the gradual release of responsibility. I show you how it's done, we do it together to make sure you've got it, and then you take off with it. That's the easiest place to start, because you have those little hooks in your head. And so let's say it's a writing lesson. The first thing you would do is you would do a shared writing where you took a topic on the projector or on the computer, however you want to do that, and you begin to compose a piece and have input from the class, but you are controlling the writing production. The next piece is the students and you do it together, and you step back a little bit and let them have more and more control, more and more ownership. And then finally, they do it, and you watch and monitor and guide. That's the first place to start, because that will evoke questions. And really and truly, a teacher needs to think all the time, everything I do needs to matter. It needs to matter to my students, and I need to show them how and why it matters. And if you are dealing with content that matters, and you show your students how that content does matter and can matter in their lives, they will begin to ask questions and to question it. I really like Cody. I taught a lot of things, but I love teaching social studies and literature particularly, but social studies I love too. And I love to pose questions to students, these broad, open-ended questions, and let them go at it and begin to take that apart. Then I begin to challenge them for examples from their reading. Okay, you read this page on the American Revolution. Now, here's a question about it. Let's begin to have a discussion around that. So that's how I would start. First with gradual release of responsibility, and as we do that, more and more authentic learning and questioning.
That's awesome. So you've obviously had a lot of success in the classroom, getting these teachers from knowledge level to more deeper questioning. Mm-hmm. What sort of successes have you had in regards to student voice in the classroom?
For me, when I was teaching the 4th and 5th grade, student voice didn't come at the very first, because I think the first couple of years for me was a lot about classroom management, and I had to get my feel in the classroom first. Once I did that, after a couple of years, I knew what I was doing. I knew where the curriculum was going. I knew the standards. I didn't have to look at my book. I knew what they were. I had them in my head. I knew what materials I had to teach those standards. And see, that's where you have to go. You can't say I'm teaching a book. You're teaching kids, and you're using standards to guide you to teach kids. But kids will teach you also how to teach them. And I saw student voice really began to open up around, like I was saying a minute ago, posing questions in social studies and history lessons, also in writing, because my class did a lot of writing. We wrote in many different subject areas and many different genres. And I would find that their voice in actually commenting and conferencing with each other on writing. Like, for example, every day when we finished our writing workshop, we would gather together at the front of the classroom. Some would sit on the floor, some wouldn't, and we would have a discussion. Somebody would read something, and they would begin to share, hey, what did you mean by that? Well, why did you write it like that? Why did you use that verb? Why did you use that construction? And the more I allowed that and supported that and guided that and modeled, students just took it and came alive and came out really at the end of the year with a voice that they could then use in other classes. And I would have them tell me, because I taught there for 16 and a half years, so I would hear them later and even years later say, you know, I learned in your class how to have a discussion. I learned how to argue respectfully. I learned how to push back respectfully. Those kinds of things.
Building a really important skill set that me going through my middle school and my high school, it was very focused on here's what you need to memorize, here's what you do, and be ready for the test on Monday. And it's great to hear a classroom that's not so focused on that, and it's building a skill set that's going to translate into the real world and not just the Monday afternoon test.
Exactly. Teachers really need to reflect, Cody. Teachers need to spend, I believe every teacher needs to keep a journal or have a mentor that they have coffee with once a week to really reflect on their teaching. What do I believe about learning? Do I believe learning can be accomplished by assigning a student a reading on Monday, then coming into class and having them write down the vocabulary, all the bold words, and look them up in the back of the book, and then on Tuesday they answer the questions? You know, that's how it goes. That's how my classes were when I was growing up too. But I had a few really creative teachers then. But teachers need to ask themselves, because we have to teach from what we believe about learning. And you asked me too, another thing that I'm really passionate about right now, and it definitely involves student voice. It involves what I believe about democracy and teaching democracy in the classroom. Just not teaching political science. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about how to live as a citizen, how to be a productive human being in society. And I believe that this comes by exercising your voice and by using that voice to express yourself. But a teacher's got to have thick skin too, because they will begin to push back and they'll ask very hard questions and very challenging questions. And you can't let that throw you or dissuade you and make you go back and into an old paradigm that you no longer believe in.
Definitely. So to go back to what you said at the beginning, you were in teaching for many years, and then you found Student Voice. When you found Student Voice, the organization, how did you get involved first, and what did you end up doing with them?
Yeah, I started first of all, just with chats and getting to know people there, and then someone from a chat asked me if I would join a committee that they were working on to work on a curriculum project. I said, yeah, I would be happy to do that. And the more I was in the chats and the more I began to talk with the people there, relationships began to develop. I travel a good bit doing business-related things, and I was in San Diego, and I looked up one of the Student Voice people and had lunch, and it was a wonderful opportunity to meet face-to-face, and it was like 2 hours passed before we could blink our eyes. But I learned so much from him just in those couple of hours, and I look forward to meeting others as time allows. And participating in any kind of committee, what's so exciting to me is to watch you guys lead. You know, you're such good leaders. Like, you're leading this interview. asking excellent questions, very supportive. Um, that is very exciting to me. When we meet in our Google Hangouts to talk about our curriculum project, to watch the students set the agenda. I'm not there to lead. I do have some things to share, and you guys know I will share them.
It's very valuable too.
But I'm listening to you, and I want to encourage you to go forward. And to kind of wind up, one of my most exciting things with student voice that happened recently, there is a movement really around the world called EdCamp. Mm-hmm. And it was originated by Edutopia, George Lucas's organization. And if you haven't heard of EdCamp, look it up, edcamp.org. And they have them all over the country and around the world. And what it is, it's called an unconference. And when you go, teachers go. There's no fee. It's free of charge, and you go. And the first thing when you get in, there's this big board with the times 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, and then across the top are the room numbers. There's no agenda. You begin to make an agenda and create it around what you're interested in. And then other people come in and they put a post-it up and they say, I'd like to join, or, oh, you're interested in that? Well, I could host that and facilitate that conversation. And then by 9 o'clock, the whole board is full, the agenda's set, and people start moving. Well, I hosted one in Ventura, California, a couple of Saturdays ago. I wanted to do empowering students by releasing their voice in the classroom. And so I hosted a session. I had a whole bunch of teachers join the session. Then I didn't tell them. I said, you're going to have a surprise guest, but I didn't tell them any more than that. And I had 5 of the most wonderful student voice participants. Adil was there, Zach was there, Parag was there, Tom was there, and Keaton was there. And they all came in on Google Hangout. We had a great tech setup where they were on the big screen like movie stars, and the people in the room could interact with them and ask them questions. But it wasn't, ask questions to the young people. It was a genuine pedagogical, philosophical conversation about what makes education work. And it was absolutely thrilling, and it was the talk of the camp. People just loved it, and I see people now or see them on Twitter, and they'll remark about that event. And I plan to do it more as I go to ed camps and bring some of you guys in, because I want you to be out in front, and I want to stand beside you and behind you and push you forward.
So what were some of the major insights that you had with that session that you led with Student Voice?
See there, I told you you're a great interviewer. That's a great question. Absolutely. The thing that people talk about the most is that with all of the students, the common thread was, I can't tell you the day I learned how to square a binomial. I can't tell you the day I learned the water cycle, but I can tell you the day that teacher made me feel like I was a learner. I can tell you the day that teacher hurt my feelings. I can tell you the moment when that teacher inspired me, and I will never be the same. It was all about relationships and feelings and how people felt about it. And I believe learning starts there, Cody. I think you start with motivation, and motivation leads to self-esteem, and self-esteem and motivation lead to self-efficacy, which is, I believe that I can do this, and self-efficacy leads to empowerment. That's just my philosophy.
So I know this is like a really specific question. So say a teacher is making this transition from knowledge level questions to a much deeper level, and they're going through this process. If they stumble and say they have a few students that just aren't necessarily getting it, or into it as much as the teacher would like, what advice do you have for them to help get them over the hill?
Mhm. First of all, if you really believe in it, let the students have a choice. If there's some students who will tell you, and they will at first, I'd rather be over at this table reading the chapter by myself. I don't want to participate in these conversations, then don't make them.
Okay, so it's more
Um,
like facilitating the learning process
yeah,
rather than just
yeah,
blasting it to them.
exactly. And you know what? I think forcing um, a student voice type conversation can be just as bad as banking information, depositing it into their head, if that's not where they're ready to connect. I
Mhm.
think they have to be led to that step by step. You can't just impose it on them. And one book that I would recommend that all teachers um, take a look at is called When Students Have Power. And I will turn. As you can see, I have a book or two. And it's right here. And here's the book. It's called When Students Have Power by Shor. And it was written probably 20 years ago, but it's all about a very thoughtful teacher who took on student voice in his classroom and student empowerment, and through the thicks and thins of it made it work. So there's a lot of good literature out there, and it's not just now. John Dewey was talking about this at the turn of the 20th century. This is not new, but nothing is in education. And we can stand on the shoulders of giants and see our students really be empowered. We've been in an era of input, output, input, output, input, output. We're going to put in standards-based kinds of things. We're going to put out high-stakes testing, input, output. And where are the students in that? Are we raising a generation of thinkers? Are we raising a generation of questioners? Because if you're not a thinker, if you're not a questioner, you're not going to be a world changer. You're going to be a follower of somebody else that's changing the world, maybe in a direction you would never go, but you don't have that capacity to be a thinker. You walk past some craziness on the TV news and you just soak it up and you don't question it. I want to see us raise a generation of questioners and thinkers that will change the world, and I believe we can do it. Did I lose you?
Robert, are you there?
Yeah, I lost you really quick.
All right. Well, at least we're back. There we go.
Yeah, we're there.
Okay.
So I think we got wound up.
Yeah. If do you remember where you left off, or
I can say again, I just believe that if we we need to raise a generation of questioners and people who aren't afraid to question, and I believe that will become a generation.
definitely? I think everything that you said it really kind of emphasizes the whole point of student voice of just making classroom more about the students and getting them thinking, because those are really the skills that they remember. I mean, I cannot remember anything that you mentioned about, binomials or the watershed,
Yeah,
anything like that, but I do remember when I made some breakthroughs about skills that I still carry today, and that's what I'm
yeah.
really excited about with student voice. So what advice would you have, and what action steps do you have for teachers who want to get involved with student voice?
Yeah, I would say
Yeah,
first of
I
all,
would say first of all,
we're getting some
we're
feedback.
getting some feedback.
Are we good?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's better.
Okay.
that's better.
Anyway, I would like
I would like
teachers to begin to read some of the
read
books
some
that
of
I shared.
the
They can read
They can read
Paulo Freire.
Paulo
They
Freire,
can read Irish Shor.
the Irish Shor,
They can read Bell Hooks. Those are all great authors that have been around for 20 or 40 years now.
40 years now.
Go back and read
Go back and read
Democracy and Education.
Democracy and Education.
Those are some places to start for some literature. And
And
then go and watch a class.
watch a class.
And then come on
And
to
then come on to
our
our
curriculum because we're going to have some
we're
stuff
have
there.
some stuff there.
Definitely.
And so in order to start, go
start,
back to what I said about the gradual
gradual
release
release
and follow that model
follow that model,
in steps.
it's steps.
Get a mentor
Get a
that
mentor
you
that
can
you
reflect
can
with,
reflect with,
and I think you'll have.
and I think you'll have.
Awesome. Awesome. So to wrap up, I guess that's really it. I don't want to take up too much time or run it too long, so everybody can watch the entire thing. Is there any special projects that you would like to mention for any teachers watching, or any advice, last minute advice that you have for them relating to this entire conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the last
I think
piece of
the last
advice
piece
is
of this.
it's a scare
It's a scare that
to relinquish the authority in the classroom. But you're not relinquishing, retain all your authority, share it. And I think that real knowledge occurs that way. Your knowledge grows and their knowledge grows from interacting with their thoughts and your thoughts with the thoughts of teachers. And teachers study Vygotsky, and that's really Vygotsky. His whole zone of development. We together can something that we separate. That's what I have to end.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. It has been great to talk to you, and if you don't mind, send me an email with those books that you listed, so I can kind of attach them below this interview when we get it up and posted for everybody.
Perfect. I'll do that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I will see you Monday night at our usual meeting.
Great. Okay. See you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.